Hi there, Digisola. Can you hear me?
Yes, I can. Good evening. How you doing? Thank you so much for joining.
Good. Well, thanks for having me. I'm having some technical difficulties with my camera, so I'm gonna fool around with that.
That's all right. That's all right.
That sounds like a familiar voice.
Hello, Chief. How are you doing?
I'm good. How are you, Andrew?
Very good, thank you.
Thank you so much, Andrew, for joining. So we're going to start. I keep saying that. It's been 2 minutes since I said that. Great. So okay, so good evening, everybody. We're starting. Thank you all for joining. In the interest of time and to respect everybody's time, because we have limited time, we're going to begin. I'm going to start by acknowledging the land. Everybody that has heard me speak before would know I will always do this because it's important to give honor to whom honor is due. So Halton, as we know today, is rich in history and modern tradition of many First Nations and the Métis, from the Anishinaabe to the Akawadaron, the Unashani and the Métis. These lands surrounding the Great Lakes are steeped in Indigenous history. As we gather today, I know we're gathering virtually, but we are gathering on the lands of Halton region. So as we gather today on this treaty land, we have the responsibility to honor and respect the four directions: land, water, plant, animals, ancestors that walked before us, and all the wonderful elements of creation that exist. We would like to acknowledge and thank the sagas of the Credit First Nations for sharing their traditional territory with us. And on that note, I'll introduce myself. My name is Digisola Atiba. I work as a senior manager with one of the major banks in Canada. I've had over 3 decades of banking experience, but today I represent African Caribbean Council of Halton. Who are we? We are currently 100 members strong, and we represent people from all the constituents in Halton region: Milton, Wellington, Halton Hills, Burlington, Oakville, North Burlington, Oakville. And what do we aim to achieve? What is our vision? What's our mission? We want to advocate, build, empower, and strengthen our African Caribbean community to elevate, build, and advocate for an inclusive and equitable African Caribbean community in Halton by advancing our socio-economic, political, educational, and professional empowerment. ACCH will advocate to elected officials, organizations, and businesses on programs and policies that will affect our community for meaningful and tangible change. Some of our achievements includes the Black History Month proclamation that was done in Milton this past February. It seems like, oh my goodness, tons of years ago now. Supporting food banks in all the 5 constituents in Halton region. And again, through empowering, we've started working with our youth, because we know that our youths are the leaders of tomorrow. So we did something around coding for them. We know technology is the way it is now. So we want to support our youths through that. And during the peak of Black Lives Matter, we did have a town hall. We continue to evolve as we go. This is one of the things that we do, our Let's Talk virtual series. And we're very, very happy that the chief is able to join us today. So I will take this time to quickly introduce the chief. He's no stranger to a lot of people on this line. Chief Turner is the chief of police. He was born in Oakville, Ontario, and he earned a Bachelor's of Art degree at the University of Guelph before entering the policing profession as a member of the Halton Regional Police Service in the fall of 1982. In 1998, Steve accepted the position of Deputy Chief of Operations with the Guelph Police Service, a position he held until relocating to Belleville as the Deputy Chief in 2000. In 2001, he graduated from the Masters of Public Administration's degree program at the University of Western Ontario. In January 2002, he was chosen as Belleville's Chief of Police. At that time, and at the age of 41, Steve was one of the youngest, if not the youngest, Chief of Police in Canada. In November 2008, he became the Chief of the Kingston Police Force. In June 2012, he was named Chief of the Halton Regional Police Service and returned home to his hometown of Oakville and commenced his duties as Halton in September 2012. He has actively been involved for many years with a variety of organizations and boards and a variety of sports teams, organizations. He has served as president of the Ontario Association of Chief of Police. He's currently serving with his second term as the chief of the governing body of the Criminal Intelligence Service of Ontario, and is a member of both the OACP and CACP organized crime committees. In January 2012, he was appointed by the Governor General of Canada as an officer of the Order of Merit of the Police Forces. As of September 13, 2020, he would have completed 38 years of police service and is entering into his 20th year as the Chief of Police. Also here today, I'd like to acknowledge Sergeant Ryan Smith, is the Equity, Diversity and Inclusion Officer. Thank you so much for making this happen. And our moderator today is no other than Christine McIntosh. Christine McIntosh is one of the directors of ACCH. She is also a community outreach and development lead. Christine is a leader of the 2 employee resource group at Eaton Industries in Burlington. WAVE, I urge for women supporting STEM and the advancement and empowerment of women in the electrical industry, and BIPOC, which is designed to identify new ways for listening, learning, and co-creating and investing in BIPOC, Black, Indigenous, and people of color. Christine believes in engaging with and encouraging others to value differences and share different perspectives within workplace and the community, which lead to greater performance, globalization, and innovation. She's passionate with dismantling of racism within Canada and abroad, and believes that racism is not only violent, it is differences and rights, privileges, and opportunities baked into our institutions over generations to oppress people of color. Christine believes that defeating racism is an active process of unlearning and re-educating, of facing the problems head-on and remaking our society in the idea of equality. And that is why we have this forum. So this forum is what we call Let's Talk virtual series. So I thank the chief again for coming. I thank everybody online for coming. I'm going to pass it on to the chief to just tell us a little bit about what he's been doing in the region of Halton before Christine goes on and talk about the various questions that we have. Thank you, everybody.
Great, and thank you so much. I also see Councillor Pavan Pamar here, and Mayor Rob Burton has joined us, snuck in from Oakville as well, so along with Andrew Terrell and others, and it's great to see everyone online on this forum tonight. I think we're all getting used to WebEx and Zoom, and now you've introduced me to Google Meets, and we've used that a couple times. It looks like it's working well, so let's go with this, and we'll run with it. But I also want to say a special thank you to our African Caribbean Council of Halton, ACCH, for reaching out, and along with Sergeant Ryan Smith that's here with us and others for setting up this meeting this evening. And what better day to meet for this purpose than World Human Rights Day? So I put some things on Twitter. This is World Human Rights Day. So what better day to talk about some of the things that have been going on in our world and some of the things that should not go on in our world. And I thought this evening, well, first of all, I was the youngest when I was 41, but if you do the math, I'm not 41 anymore. So that introduction can make me seem pretty old, but I still feel young. So there's a few years of important work that we are all going to get a chance to do together. So thank you for that opportunity. And I thought this evening I would start out by providing some opening comments and a few statistics for the group. I had some of the questions given to me ahead of time, so I can go through some of that up front if that meets with your needs, and then we can circle back around and have more discussion. Does that work for everybody? Sounds good. Well, thank you. And perhaps, I'll talk about some of the history when it comes to the Halton Regional Police Service. And I started here in 1982 and had 16 years here as we were starting some of our community consultation and working with community groups. And that's really developed over many, many years, thanks to some of the chiefs, such as Chief Jim Harding many years ago, who sort of paved the way for some of us to do some of the work that we're now able to do in today's day and era. But we've had a long-standing Chiefs Diversity Forum or committee, and Andrew Terrell, I know that's on the line with us this evening, and perhaps some others have been a part of that group for many, many years. Certainly Veronica Terrell, Andrew's mother before him. And we also do a lot of work with our Halton Multicultural Council, which does a tremendous amount of work opening the doors to new residents to Canada, new residents to the Halton area. And most importantly, our desire is to serve everybody, to serve all people equally, and to treat all people fairly in all that we do. And you know what? There's no other way. And that's not just saying that because it's World Human Rights Day. That's the way I believe things need to be. I know that's the way Mayor Burton and Chair Burton of the Police Services Board feels as well. There is no place in our society today for racism or systemic discrimination of any type. And as your chief of police, and just as me, Steve Tanner, I strongly believe that we all have to do all that we can do to eliminate racism and remove that systemic discrimination. And not only in policing and not only in Halton, but across Canada and in everything that we do in our society. But Canada is built on and is as strong as it is because of diversity and not in spite of diversity. We all benefit from being a diverse society. And I'll give you a couple examples. And in the case of Halton, we benefit from being an ever increasing diverse community. And thankfully, we are becoming increasingly diverse. That is not true for all parts of this country and certainly not at the same speed. Let me give you a little bit of history in relation to myself. As you just heard, I grew up in Oakville. This is my hometown. I was born in 1960. So my public school and high school years here in Oakville were from about 1964 in kindergarten till when I graduated from high school in 1978. And I can tell you, we were anything but diverse during those years. When I went to high school here in Oakville at GE Purdue High School at Dorval and Rebecca, some of you will now know St. Thomas Aquinas Catholic High School is there. There were 2 Black students that I knew in the entire school of about 1,200, Gary and Kathy. I played football with Gary Brooks, and I played in the school band with Kathy. And they were the only 2 out of 1,200 who I would recognize as being racially diverse. I can't imagine, looking back now, and I think about it from time to time, what that must have been like for them. And our awareness of diversity as teenagers was absolutely non-existent. And what we were taught about Black history, or more accurately, never taught about Black history, was deplorable. And I believe it still is. So let's try to change some of the narrative and some of the things that are not going on in our education systems and through our school boards. It's not all about policing as we try to address some of these issues. We need to get education on Black history into our schools. I have learned more about Black history in the last 5 years than I did in my first 25 years, and that's wrong. So fast forward many years, and I began policing, as I said, in 1983 in Burlington. Years later, I moved to Guelph as a deputy and then to Belleville. And I had the opportunity to be the chief there for 8 years prior to Kingston, and later returning here in 2012. And I'll tell you, when I was the chief in Belleville, and from about 2004 to 2008, my oldest son was in high school in Belleville, in a very large school. and coincidence or not, there were 2 Black students. And that is how undiverse parts of Ontario, and particularly parts of Eastern Ontario, continued to be up until more current times. And you know, the one regret that I have for Jordan having grown up in Belleville, and my younger son as well, was the lack of diversity. We are stronger and better here because of our diversity. And my oldest son now is a police officer in Hamilton, and my youngest son is completing his master's degree at the University of Toronto, and truly is a champion for human rights and equality across all sorts of genders and diversity. But our diversity now in Halton is much, much richer. And thank you to each of you who have chosen Halton as your home or place to work for making that decision. And we welcome you here, and you belong here. And I thank you for being here. And I thank you for all being here this evening to speak with me and to hear from us and from the police service. There's a few topics that were put onto a list for us to talk about tonight: diversity and inclusion in our community and in our police service, employment opportunities and career paths related to information for racialized communities, questions about what am I doing or what are the Halton Regional Police Service doing to ensure fairness in the hiring practice or process, and understanding the percentage, a specific question about trying to understand the percentage of African Caribbeans in the Halton Police, and to have some discussion about what is a lack of trust at times in our communities, perceptions, realities, and true factors. And how are the police taking steps to ensure that we are equitable in dealing with our communities? And what do we need from you as our community to make all of us better? Good. I'm not going to address all of those things in order, but I will attempt to touch on them as I go through some points that I would like to share with you. And then I'm certainly open to any questions and all sorts of discussion and feedback. But when we talked about diversity and inclusion in our police service and in our community, diversity means many things in our society today. It's not just Black and white. It's not just Indigenous and Aboriginal people and related issues and concerns, and those are all true and real, but also includes different communities and groups such as our LGBTQS community and many others. So we have done some work, the Police Services Board, and certainly Chair Burton, I'm sure, will comment on this as well, and the police service, the group called CCDI, Canadian Centre for Diversity and Inclusion. And we use them to survey our members and provide us with a snapshot relating to our diversity, or in some cases, lack of diversity. Within the HRPS, our Halton Regional Police Service, and with this data looked at through the lens of our community data when it comes to diversity, we have a fairly strong representation of persons from the LGBTQS community and from the Aboriginal community, although that is quite small in Halton. And I'll give you just a couple of numbers, but on the LGBTQS side, we are over 5%, slightly more than the Ontario population of 5.1. Aboriginal, Indigenous persons, we are slightly higher, about 3 times the no one percentage of Indigenous people in Halton. But when it comes to racialized persons, HRPS is just over 11%, and Halton is closer to 25% in the statistics that CCDI are using. Now, when it comes to gender, we are lower represented overall on the female side with about 37%, whereas Halton would be, they use 48. I usually use 51 or 52%. But looking at that CCDI survey, which is voluntary and not all of our members responded, and looking at the numbers who have self-identified as Black in that survey, we had 0.72% compared to about 2.8% from the 2016 census in Halton. So we are underrepresented as when we look at our population relating to our Black community, and we want to change that. And that takes input and work from all of us. So I'll certainly put that out as a challenge to all of you when you know people who are interested or may be interested in a career in policing, not necessarily, but could be a sworn police officer, or our many, many civilian positions. Please encourage people to think about us and to think about this profession where they can truly make a difference directly. We welcome your input and, as I said, any assistance that you can provide to us. Just as we solicit, and Andrew and others will know, Richard Pinnock, if he joins us tonight from our diversity committee and from CCAH, to attract more applicants to the policing profession. And only working together and understanding each other by becoming more representative of the community that we serve will we reach out and reach our potential as a police service. We too need diversity because it also makes us stronger, not just our community stronger. Just think of how much stronger it will make us to be not only more representative of our community, but to have within our ranks the actual lived experiences that so many of you could educate us about. Now, there were questions about employment and recruiting and careers for our racialized communities and what else are we doing. So I want to mention a few things because we really are very active. One of the best things that we've done recently, and on my screen, he's sitting in the middle of my screen wearing a black uniform shirt similar to myself, is to have a full-time diversity, equity, and inclusion sergeant in Ryan Smith, who some of you either knew from before or have come to know in his new position. But in addition to all of our normal recruiting initiatives, media releases, and we do public events, and a very strong presence on social media, both the police service and the police services board, Twitter, Instagram, and to be honest with you, some other platforms I don't even know the names of, but our corporate communications people are working on them. I've never done anything on TikTok. I've been threatened that I have to, but I'm holding back on that one. But in addition to our recruiting initiatives and specific to attracting Black officers or members from the Black community to our service, we also participate in an organization known as ABLE. I'm not sure how many people have, maybe by a show of hand, have heard of ABLE, the Association of Black Law Enforcement Officers. We take part in their gala and their career fairs. In fact, the Halton Regional Police Service was honored just last year to host the ABLE Gala event here in Halton and Burlington. We were going to do it again, and COVID got in the way. I think we may have been one of the first organizations to do it 2 years in a row. We participate in the Canadian Caribbean Association of Halton Youth Leadership Program. Richard Pinnock and Andrew and others are certainly involved heavily in that. Last year, we hosted a career fair for the South Asian community. We do women's career symposiums as well. And our recruiting unit has also liaised with our internal support networks, including one internal support network we have for our Black police officers here in Halton. So we have an internal support network for our Black officers. Our female officers is a relatively new one, another for members of the service who are members, identified or not, of the LGBTQ community. The Recruiting Bureau is developing an ambassador recruitment program where members, including members of that ISN that I spoke about, our Black police officers and civilian members, are both supported and encouraged by the recruiting unit to do outreach and engagement with our priority populations for the purpose of recruiting, and certainly very much so in the Black community. We also have coordination efforts with our Regional Community Mobilization Bureau and our Equity, Diversity, and Inclusion team towards supporting community events. And I don't know how many of you, perhaps another show of hands, I'm not sure how many people are on the screen compared to the number that are on the call, but we have our Police Day, which is a large open house here. I think we had, what was the number last time, Ryan? I know you're muted there. Many thousands of people who come to Police Day every day. And we also have another day dedicated to new arrivals in Canada and new citizens of Halton, ACCH, which is heavily attended and very well attended. Again, both postponed, unfortunately, because of COVID. And we also have our long-running and successful peace programs. It actually started when I was the training sergeant back in around 1992 or just before, police ethnic and cultural education program to purposely bring diverse youth into the police service to experience the service, to meet the officers, to interact in positive relationships, and to learn more about the police service, and also perhaps to generate interest in policing as a profession. Probably our most famous graduate of that program is Nishan Dariappa, who abandoned us and myself not too long ago as one of my great deputy chiefs to become the chief of the Peel Regional Police Service. So we wish Nish all the best and incredible success for his future. But he started here as a peace student. His name was put forward by a high school teacher in Milton, who he still thanks to this day, and who attended his swearing-in ceremony in Peel as the chief of police, because that teacher had put Nish's name forward as a person who potentially could benefit from that program. So please think about our peace programs and also our YIPPY program, Youth in Policing Initiative, and certainly Ryan could speak more specifically about that if you have specific questions while we're on this call tonight. Now, it's very important that whatever we do, especially in our hiring process and in our promotional processes, is fair and it's seen to be fair. And while all of the above things are in place to potentially attract applicants, we're still not attracting enough. And let's face it, because of some of the negativity that's gone on, not just in recent months, but in the years leading up till now, there may be some people, and particularly Black youth, who are turned off of policing and might not be thinking about policing as a career. The time is no better than now to get involved if people are interested and would like to make a difference. So the first part of the application process is online. It used to be a little bit more complicated. It went through something called the Applicant Testing Service. It was a provincial initiative through the Ministry of the Solicitor General and the Ontario Association of Chiefs of Police. That's been simplified now. So there are online tests that potential applicants will have to go through. And once they are satisfactory going through those, they will receive a certificate, which then allows them to apply to be a police officer. There's not a similar process on the civilian side, so you don't have to go through you don't have to jump over that hurdle in relation to our civilian employment, but it is much simpler than it was before. And once they have that certificate, they can then apply to the Halton Regional Police Service to become a cadet with us or to become a sworn police officer, which would mean they would then go off to the Ontario Police College. So, and then here in Halton, we have highly trained and experienced recruiting officers who are not just trained in recruiting and interviewing, but are also aware, very much aware of our need and desire to hire for diversity, and are further trained to recognize inherent biases and discriminatory practice. And the goal is to identify the best candidates. And I can say that our recent recruit classes, and Chair Burton attends the graduation of all of those groups along with many members of the service, again, pre-COVID. But our classes have become increasingly diverse, both by gender and by diversity, but we still need to do more. And we also have to remember there's a backdrop to this. In the reality of police budgets and in the budget that we are hopeful will receive final approval from the Region of Halton Council this week or next, in that budget for next year is built in 14 or 15 additional police officers. So we have, we have just over 1,000 full-time employees. About 750 of those are sworn police officers. And in 2021, that number would go, let's say, from 750 to 764. That's not a huge opportunity to add to our diversity, but we also have people retiring that need to be replaced by either young recruit officers or experienced officers wanting to come here from other police services. So there are additional opportunities for us to build on our diversity and the image that we have and that we want to have within our community. Now, one of the other questions was in relation to a lack of trust in our communities, and what I say to this often is there are realities, there are perceptions, and then there is media, and all play an important role. The reality is that there is and can be a lack of trust in the police when it comes to some of our racialized communities and with our relationships with our Black communities and with our citizens. We can't say that's only in the United States. We can't say that's only in Toronto or Peel. It may be more visible in some places, it may be more obvious or not, but we can't just carte blanche say that we do not have an issue, because systemic discrimination is everywhere and the issue is everywhere. And while we are here and in Halton to be very clearly serve every citizen equally, fairly and equitably, that has not been our profession's history at times, and we need to do better, and we will. Earlier today, and it happened to be on World Human Rights Day, the Canadian Association of Chiefs of Police issued a very lengthy and very sincere apology to the LGBTQ community for injustices and inequalities in police actions across Canada over many, many years. Homosexuality was stricken as previously it had been illegal back in the 1960s when the other Prime Minister, Trudeau, was our Prime Minister. And despite the fact that many laws changed in the years subsequent to the 1960s, there were still a lot of actions, police actions, against the LGBT community. Some people will be familiar with raids known as the Bathhouse raids in Toronto. There were certainly high-profile incidents in Calgary or Edmonton, Alberta, as well. So there has been this apology made today, and I would say not just because of who I'm speaking with tonight, but also because it's World Human Rights Day. That same sort of equality should be made to the Black community by the police community. So let's work towards that as well. That was an initiative from the Canadian Association of Chiefs of Police, but we're all responsible for what we do. And I believe that there have been injustices over time, and we need to make amends and apologies for those, and we need to move forward together in a much more unified sense. As a police service and as your chief, we were heavily involved with Justice Michael Tulloch. I'm assuming most of you would be familiar with Justice Tulloch and his review and his work on carding. Not specific to the Toronto Police Service, although that is where that issue first arose, but it was certainly a practice that was used in police services, intelligence street checks, whatever we wanted to call them many, many years ago, and it certainly had to change. And I'll tell you, Michael and I have become close personal friends, as he has with Mayor Burton from Oakville. And that is in part because he and I share the view that discrimination and racism have no place in policing or otherwise. Now, we here in the Halton Regional Police Service, I can tell you, we have not done carding for many, many years. And Justice Tulloch was happy to learn that when he came here and researched how we do things differently in Halton. And of our practice of, we will put in a general occurrence report, it would be called, in relation to a suspicious person or a suspicious activity, but not an arbitrary stop to get someone's identity for no reason and to just put it on a piece of paper that then was not questioned or verified later. And in the case, I'll speak of Toronto, would then go into a database, which could negatively impact someone's chances of employment, particularly with the service or otherwise. So it's a good thing that Justice Tulloch did the work that he did, and we are fully supportive of that. But I'll tell you, I think as we learn as people, and only recently I read the fabulous article that was written by Desmond Cole back in 2015. And on his lived experiences, both with the Kingston Police, which ironically was Kingston, although it was probably about 6 to 8 years before I was in Kingston as the chief, when he attended Queen's University for a couple of years in the early 2000s, and when he returned to Toronto. And Desmond talks of being stopped in excess of 50 times by police arbitrarily. Now, he's mainly, in what I read, talking about Kingston to begin with, and then more so Toronto, and of the fear that struck in his heart on those many occasions. And I can tell you, I don't care if I am white and I was born white, I do not have that lived experience. And that is an emotional thing for me to read Desmond's account of how that made him feel. That's why we need to make a difference, so that doesn't happen to some young Black youth or young East Indian youth or to anyone else. It's unacceptable, and it cannot be allowed to happen. And I've reached out to Desmond on Twitter, and I look forward to talking with him personally, because I think there's more to learn and more to share. I think sometimes within a culture or within a police culture, some members would say, oh, that's that activist from Toronto. Maybe it's not true. But you know what? These things have happened, and they are true, and we need to learn from them. And another example is Dwight Drummond. I don't know how many people follow Dwight Drummond and his career. He's now the nighttime news anchor on CBC. He's had his own lived experiences with police, and many years ago in Toronto, complaints about the Toronto police. But nonetheless, it's about police. And Dwight and I have talked through social media, and he is also provides a valuable lesson that none of us can forget. Now, there's always the media. Most of you would probably agree with me that the media are not normally focused on good news. They're certainly not focused on good news when it comes to the police. It's not going to be in the Toronto Sun, the Toronto Star, or on City TV or CBC tomorrow that we had this meeting tonight. That's not what the media are looking for. Bad news sells newspapers, and TV attracts viewers. And we've had far too much bad news brought about by absolute tragedies, such as the murder of George Floyd in Minneapolis just in May of this year. So these bad news accounts are real. All I'm saying is we also have good news, and we have to make more good news together, and we have to make a positive difference. And I'm sure all of you know, we certainly know, we had Black Lives Matter marches and protests throughout Halton, through each of our communities. Certainly here in Oakville, where I am sitting right now in my headquarters in my hometown, in Burlington, Milton, and in Halton Hills, after that tragic incident in Minneapolis, and to protest, rightfully so. And those were lawful and peacefully carried out protests, and we as a police service were there to support those in attendance, and I was at 3 of them. They were largely very respectful youth that wanted to speak out, make a positive difference, and to rightfully speak out about racial injustice. And I publicly applauded them for their actions. I know Richard Pinnock from our CCAH spoke out on LinkedIn and Twitter about that very positive relationship and the interactions between those in attendance at those marches and those youth, particularly, and with the Halton Police. I'll tell you, I had a staff sergeant call me from Burlington because one of our Black officers wanted to march in the parade. And his question was, should he be able to march in the parade in his uniform because he was working that day? Or should he march in his civilian clothes? And my question was, does he want to march in uniform? And he did. And the only thing I said to him was, let's march behind the parade so that we're supporting it. Let's not march in front of the parade so it looks like we're somehow controlling it. Because those youth were controlling that event. And certainly our officers, and not just him, there were several, took part in particularly in the parade that ended up at Burlington City Hall. But that's what we should do. if other events become unlawful and people are being injured and properties being severely damaged, and we've seen some terrible situations in the United States primarily, certainly it's a different situation, but we've been very fortunate here. And to some degree, that's because of the positive relationships that we have ahead of time. Now, let's face it, we've had negative interactions with persons from our diverse and our Black communities here in Halton too. What I can tell you, and I really strongly believe, negative incidents with the police or negative interactions with the police are underreported. Absolutely believe that. We know other things are underreported, like intimate partner violence or domestic violence is very much underreported, and negative interactions with the police or complaints about the police are by no means is every situation reported. But what has been reported here in the last 3 to 4 years are a total of, we've had 3 human rights complaints in relation to how a Black individual felt they had been treated by the Halton police. And we've had 3 complaints go to what's called the OIPRD. So in Ontario, there's an Office of the Independent Public Review Director. It's so that public complaints about the police are taken away from the police. They should be completely, in my view, dealt with independently. The reality is they don't have enough people there or enough of a budget, so they send a lot of it back to the police service to investigate. I've said to the province, I believe it should be funded much higher and that every public complaint should be dealt with totally independent from the police for a number of reasons. But there's been a lot of expenses this year, and I'm not sure that the OIPRD are going to receive increased funding in their near future, but we can be hopeful that they do. But those are only the formal complaints. I highly realize that, but I think as a group here this evening, for us, for Halton residents, there is some comfort in relatively low numbers, but agreeing totally that they're not completely indicative of what may have transpired in our communities. Now, there's other question that was mentioned was support and what we need from our community to improve trust and engagement. And you know what, it starts with nights like tonight. It starts with conversation and questions, not just me talking. So I look forward more to the next part of our evening together. It starts with groups such as this. It starts with groups such as CCAH, and it starts with our diversity forum, and it starts with individuals who want to reach out, learn more about the police service, share more with the police service, because we need that. And I think we really would benefit, and I'll throw this out later, but I think we would really benefit here, and I'll sort of challenge Ryan to collect some of this, but to have some real life lived experiences from Halton residents about their experience with the police. I mean, I'm so appreciative of Desmond Cole's story and Dwight Drummond's story. I'd like to know John Smith from Halton's story, and to really bring it home to how people feel in our community at times because of the police. So I think we have to be open to meeting, discussing like we are tonight, thank you, talking about the hard issues, not just the easy ones, not just saying we're doing all the right things and patting ourselves on the back because we need to do all of this to become better. And secondly, this is not new to the Halton Regional Police Service. Our longstanding Diversity Forum Committee has served us very well and will continue to. Please consider joining that group, and Andrew can certainly speak about that perhaps at some point. But the relationships that we've fostered, built, and developed and have to continue to foster and develop are what are going to get all of us through some of the more difficult times. It's too late when something happens, such as George Floyd in Minneapolis, to somewhere across the world or across the United States start to try to pretend you're building relationships. It has to be authentic, it has to be real, and it has to be both sides wanting to truthfully engage and make a difference. And I welcome all diverse members and all citizens to engage with us And after all, we are your police service. And I know Mayor Burton will say that if he is here. The Peel principles, the people are the police and the police are the people, could not be more true. And the reality of what else Sir Robert Peel said, although almost 200 years ago, is the police can only police to the level that the community will allow them to. It's policing by consent. And when that balance, I was reading about this in another book just a few days ago, when that balance is out of whack, that's when turmoil really erupts, because people don't have the avenues to communicate and discuss, and frustrations are so high. So before I finish up, I want to mention a very open and transparent document, and Sergeant Smith was instrumental in developing this. We've just made it publicly accessible, and this document is intended to answer many questions relating to policing, training and recruiting, mental health, use of force, why officers do what they do or don't do in some certain circumstances, and many other topics. And it is available on our website, and actually our new upgraded website will launch this coming week. So please take advantage of that and read that, because the intent of that, and Ryan certainly can speak to it, was to put a lot of answers out there to questions that we know people have, questions that either we receive or Mayor Burton or Pavan and other councillors receive from their constituents, and then they reach out to us for answers. Why not provide all of that ahead of time? Here's why we do what we do. Here's the mental health issues that we deal with. So have a look at that, and Ryan can certainly give everyone the coordinates to find that information. But I'm certainly open to discussing anything with you here this evening. Thank you so much. I know I've rambled on, but I wanted to cover off a number of issues. So thank you, and I look forward to our talk.
I put that link in the group chat for everybody, so you can access that and save that for that document.
Great. Thanks, Ryan.
Thank you, Chief. Christine, over to you.
Perfect. Yes. Thank you, Chief, and thank you for the other law enforcement that are on the call today, and as well as everybody else joining. That was some really great informative information, and you did a lot of bullets that we did have. Chief, one of the questions I did want to ask that we had from some of the callers is in budgetary allocation. So many people are pushing for defunding of the police, but we need the law enforcement, let's face it. But is there a new strategy that will focus on de-escalating situations and preventing them from getting to exasperated levels like we've seen before? Like,
yeah,
sorry.
You're breaking up a little bit, Kristen, but I've got most of that question, but it might be your microphone.
Okay, let me put my headset on.
But I do think I got most of your question there. So there's probably 2 or 3 parts to that. One is the funding of the police, and we take a very proactive approach to the budget of the Halton Regional Police Service, working in conjunction with our Halton Regional Police Services Board, and the chair of the board is here. So our budget goes through that board, who are responsible and set our priorities with us, and also have developed a wonderful, and it really is the state-of-the-art, community safety and well-being plan. So if you haven't yet had an opportunity, please have a look at the Halton Community Safety and Well-Being Plan, because it is the bigger picture. It's not all about policing. I can tell you only about 20 or 25% of what our officers do on a regular basis is crime related. A lot of it these days is mental health. A lot of it is drug and alcohol addictions, and a lot of it is sort of societal disorder. But I do not, and I should also make the point, we are the most cost-effective and efficient police service of any of the Big 12 in Ontario and beyond. We have lower staffing levels, and actually Mr. Terrell also used to be a member of our police services board. So we do more with less here in Halton, and we're particularly proud of that. But one of the reasons we continually exceed the other police services performance is because of the involvement of our community with us. The people who report crime, the people who call when they see something happening, and those relationships are big as well. The answer is certainly there are monies that are needed in other areas, mental health specifically, drug and alcohol addictions, and many other areas, homelessness. The region of Halton is working on all of those things through the community safety and well-being, and there's quite a detailed body of work done, particularly in relation to housing. And all of that money needs to be found somewhere, not necessarily cut from police budgets. There may be other sources. Let's look for those things. But I mean, the province, certainly among others, need to do more in the area of mental health and alcohol and drug addiction in particular. The other part of your question about de-escalation is we train, and some of that information will be in the document that Ryan will share with you. Other more detailed information we can certainly provide. We've even had members of our police services board go through some of our use of force training so they know a little bit more what it's like and what the experience is. And I can tell you that our goal, and we have a very, very professional training bureau, is always to de-escalate situations. Thankfully, as an example, we have not been involved in a police shooting for well over 2 years. And that incident only happened after 2 of our police officers were shot. So I can tell you, and tasers are a part of that, and I could talk about tasers separately, but tasers certainly are a de-escalation tool. 90 to 95% of the time, they only have to be shown. They don't even have to be used. So we need to have compliance in some situations, but we don't necessarily have to be overly forceful, as some services may be more so, or certainly historical. And I know Chair Burton is chomping at the bit to make some comments about. Does that answer your question?
It does, yes, thank you. But a follow-up question to that, especially in regards to you were saying about the excessive force. There was an incident that took place back in June, I believe June 20th, where a youth in Oakville appeared to be pushed or hurt by a member of the police force while others stood by. Can you advise us on the status of the public statement that was made in regards to the final outcome of this situation?
Yeah, I can. We, for transparency reasons, we did not want to investigate that ourselves. Sometimes between the time of the incident and now, I wish we had. But we wanted to go to an external police service to investigate that. So it was independent. So someone didn't think that a decision was made to either charge or not charge the officer because they were all within the same service. And that's an issue. And, you know, rightfully, that is why the Special Investigations Unit exists as a separate example, because it's not police investigating police in the most serious situations. But so we made the decision, and also informed the board, but we made the decision to go to an external police service to investigate that. It takes some time sometimes for officers to speak to legal counsel, which they're entitled to. And then interviews had to be done. And there was a delay in one of those interviews, and the other organization then went to a Crown attorney for a legal opinion on whether the Crown attorney would support or not support a criminal charge. And then the other interview was done. So for about the last 4 weeks, I have been waiting to hear the decision of the Crown attorney in relation to pursuing that charge. I can tell you, and it was public, the officer who actually would have been seen in the video doing the pushing has been suspended from duty since that day. The only way, and I say unfortunately the only way, because in some very serious situations, the chief of police should be able to suspend somebody without pay, but we do not have that power because of the Police Services Act of Ontario, the way that it currently sits. Having said that, he has been suspended from duty since that time. Some people see that as a bit of a penalty. Some people see it as a paid holiday. And the other officers were administratively reassigned to non-frontline duties while this is going on. So it's dragged on way too long. I've made that point on Twitter, I know, to some people, and I'm hopeful every day that we'll hear the answer.
Excellent, excellent. Thank you for answering that. At this time, I'll open up. I don't want to take, all of the questions away from the callers that have called in, so I'll open it up to anybody else who'd like to ask questions from either Chief Tanner or Mayor Rob Burton or even Regional Councillor Mike Clowett.
Excuse me, can you hear me?
Yes, we can.
Oh, okay, it's Andrew Terrell. I just wanted to ask one question, and I'll just make 2 comments. The first is, I just wanted to let everybody know, I'm leaving at 7 o'clock because I have another call, but that was booked before this. But the CCH right now is engaged with developing a course at Sheridan College, and I just wanted everybody to be involved in it, and I'll just tell you a little bit about it. It's starting in the winter of 2021, and it's in the social equality department, and it's called the Dimensions of Social Inequality. And it's a research study that's being funded by the Canadian Caribbean Association of Halton and the Oakville Community Foundation. And it is to acknowledge racism and that discrimination exists in Halton region. We have moved beyond the place of feeling obligated to convince people that racism and discrimination are real and happen in our community. We want to explore what Black, Indigenous, and racialized community members need to feel welcome and more included in Oakville. And we want to provide an opportunity for community members to get together, to engage, inspire, let voices be heard about what needs to happen to implement change. So essentially what it is, it's a study about not only Black people, but other racialized community members to feel a sense of belonging in Oakville and in Halton. And if they don't, to sit down with the researchers and say why they do not feel a sense of belonging, and perhaps come up with some ideas, brainstorming about what systems need to change. So I'll be sending that out to Adigisola, and she can send that out to everybody, because we're looking to conduct within that course focus groups. And then in the summer, we'll be collating all of the information, and the researchers will be writing the report. So I want everybody here to become involved in that. I just want to
Andrew, just on that, Andrew, when you're talking with the researchers, and you don't guide or direct the researchers, but I would really like them to have a look at the importance of education. Because I think, and I've read so much about that, and so much about the lack of education in our school systems, and about accurate education when it comes particularly to Black history. The town of Oakville does as you know, does a good job recognizing Black history at the different times of the year, and always, and the importance of the Underground Railroad here, and some of that history. But I grew up here and never knew that. And I bet kids in high school today don't hear about that. So that's got to change.
Yes, 100%. And that's going to be addressed as well, because obviously if we don't see ourselves in the curriculum, then we do not have a sense of belonging. So thanks for that. And the other thing that I would add is that the Halton Regional Police Service does make an effort, and I know that the chief personally does send officers to all of the events, and that gives community members a chance to interact with police, because they ordinarily only interact with police when there's an emergency call or some type of crisis situation. So the chief sending those officers to interact with the community in just a very relaxed, conversational tone and experience does a lot for mentoring, as well as recruitment for the general public. So that's another thing I don't think that the chief touched on that I think is very instrumental in humanizing police officers, as well as showing our community that the police officers are involved and concerned and attend our events.
And Andrew, if I can, that is such an important point, and I can tell you, as long as I'm the chief here, we're going to be doing that. But there's another part to that too, and that's the police officer's experience, and not just about dealing with racialized communities, but let's think about the police officer that's dealing with youth all the time and is only dealing with youth in trouble. And even back in 1982 to 1984, brand new officer, in my view, no biases, but we all have them. And I was dealing with a lot of youth that were getting into trouble. And then I had an opportunity to go and be the assistant football coach at White Oak Secondary School for 2 years, and thought, oh my God, look at all these wonderful, normal, amazing kids. So it's very important that our police officers aren't only dealing with people, no matter who they are, that are in trouble and that are in crisis. It's very important that they also have an opportunity to engage, in this case, with cultural types of get-togethers or Black History Month or whatever it might be, and get to know all of the other people, not just the ones that they may be forced to, arrest for something that went wrong. So that is very important.
And that's why this summer, when we had our meals program, one of the first meals that we served was to the Halton Regional Police Service 2 platoons. And it wasn't just to give them food. It was to sit down and break bread with them, as well as show them our Legacy Voices documentary, which is a documentary about the Canadian Caribbean Association and a number of seniors in our organization and their hurdles in coming to Canada, and how they integrated themselves in society and how they viewed themselves. And racism was there, but at the end of the day, what struck me was that they're very proud Canadians, and they're grateful to Canada for allowing them to come in and allowing them to have more opportunities that they would not ordinarily have in their home countries, as well as the legacy for their children and their children's children, etc. So we showed them that documentary, and we had a question and answer, and there were a number of officers that came to me. One female officer with tears in her eyes, and she said that the community does not know what kind of stress we're under, and it's so gratifying to see that the community is coming to our police division and offering us a chance to sit down with them and to hear what they have to say, and for them to give information. So I think that was very well received, and thank you, Chief, for allowing us to do that. And Ryan was instrumental in that as well. But we want to show them that they may only have interaction with Black and racialized folks during crisis times, but we want to show them that there's another side. So then when they have to make a split decision, that it'll be with a lot of information.
Thank you.
Just one question before I go is that I wanted to hear what the chief had to say about, you talked about the OIPRD, and I wanted to hear what he had to say about Devon Clunis and his new appointment.
Well, Devon, he's been a longtime friend of mine. Devon was the chief of the Winnipeg Police Service. Many, many years ago, he was a chaplain there. He's got a very interesting background, and he retired. And he was actually co-authoring children's books along with his wife. Some of them very much with the theme of educating on racism and anti-discrimination. But Devon was recently appointed as what will be the first ever Inspector General of Policing within the Solicitor General's office in Ontario. The Inspector General, among other things, will review policies of police services, make sure that conduct the audits of police services. Andrew, you would remember the Ministry of back then of community safety and public safety and corrections. Now the Solicitor General would send out inspectors to audit police services. That will all be done through the Inspector General's office. And Devin, I know, will and wants to play a critical role when it comes to race relations and identifying issues within policing. And also retired Deputy Chief Ken Weatherall will be his assistant or his assistant deputy minister type of position. Ken was originally with Hamilton Police and more recently the deputy chief in Barrie. So the two of them are named. They don't really have full-time staff as of yet. So this is going to be a work in progress, and we look forward to working along with Devin to try to make some positive differences.
So do they have any kind of a timeline as to when they'll be staffed up, and we'll be making some appearances, I would think, around at the Big 12 to start?
Well, I think Devin is actually speaking at a Ontario Association of Chiefs of Police speaker series in the next week or two, because all of those events are virtual. I know Devin will be planning to attend and speak to police chiefs and get to know people in Ontario specifically over the next little bit. I really am not privy to their timelines, but I think what they're going to do is move a number of their Ministry of the Solicitor General inspector types of people over to be a key part of Devin's staff in the Inspector General area. I'm not sure of the timing of that.
All right. The SIU, as you mentioned, is another sort of police oversight body, but the SIU has been criticized and continues to be criticized for, although on paper it's an independent review body, but 90% of the investigators that investigate those SIU issues when the SIU invokes their mandate are former police officers. Do you have any comment that could maybe allay some of the concerns that regular citizens have about whether the SIU does truly an independent investigation? Because a lot of people are critical and say that on paper that might be the case, but in reality it's police that are investigating police.
Yeah, it's a multifaceted thing. I do believe they are an independent body. I can tell you the director cannot have ever been a police officer. They're always a lawyer. And the investigators, I think it's a lower percentage that they're now allowed to have past police experience. I don't think it would be as high as 90, but I would have to verify the number. It might be 60 or 70. But I still see the perception. Now they have all arguably severed their ties. One of the things they will do, and I'm probably the biggest, I have said more against the SIU and their timeliness and a number of different things over the years than most. But they do need to do things in a much more timely fashion. They're still 6 to 12 months on a lot of investigations. The one thing that complicates it, if you think about it, and maybe not so much in a, for the people that don't know about the Special Investigations Unit, they invoke their mandate if a citizen or a police officer, but primarily a citizen, has either been killed or seriously injured because of an interaction with the police. So certainly a police shooting is SIU. A car accident where someone is killed as a result of a police pursuit or an accident involving a police car is SIU. So it's got to be serious injury or death. And the SIU is limited to a criminal investigation. That's where it becomes contentious sometimes, because you do have mainly past police officers, very usually experienced detectives or detective inspectors that have ran homicide types of investigations. To their credit, one of the things they will never do is they will never send an SIU investigator to investigate an incident involving a police service that he or she used to work with. So Mike Brown, who retired from the Halton Police as a staff sergeant, he's since stopped working there, but Mike was working with the SIU as an investigator. He could never investigate a Halton situation. So they do some things like that, but the perception would still be there. But if you think about more on the police shooting side, it is similar to a homicide investigation. At the end of the day, someone needs to determine whether the police officer acted criminally. Did they murder someone? Did they cause that death by criminal negligence? So it's hard to train whatever a normal citizen might be through what some of these people would have 10 or 20 years of homicide investigation. That's where they used to lean towards experience as opposed to impartiality. I think we need to have both, and that's, I believe in the new act, which now won't come into place really until, believe now it's put off to 2022. I think it's a higher percentage of SIU investigators that will have to be no police background. But it is a catch-22 on the experience side. I know the tremendous experience that some of our homicide investigators have and our sexual assault investigators here. It's hard to imagine me bringing in an untrained citizen and teaching them to be a homicide investigator. So that is a bit of a catch-22. The other thing is they need to do things much quicker. And when things drag on, it causes more, not just frustration, but concern in the community. Concern for the family and friends of a person who may have been seriously injured or in the worst case scenario killed. So that is problematic. And the other thing is that during the SIU investigation, the police chiefs or police service members, but specifically police chiefs, are forbidden and actually prohibited by law from making any public comment. So there are some instances where an incident happened. I know some facts about it, but I can't share that with the community, wherever my community is. And I'll tell you, up until about a year or so ago, most SIU investigations took 12 to 18 months. I know of one many years ago that took 5 years. It's ridiculous. And then people start to think, well, maybe the police really did do something wrong. Maybe they really are responsible. This is taking so long. There must be even more to it. There's got to be things done to make those investigations become closed or resolved in a much quicker fashion and much more transparently. It is getting a little bit better. I would give the new director some credit for that. But I'm starting to see the 6 to 8 month investigations, and there's a couple of high profile ones that are in the media. One from Toronto, and we won't get into specifics tonight, involving a tragic death of a young lady and falling from an apartment building, and a shooting situation in Peel region, which is still unresolved. And that only adds to the turmoil in our communities, and in those cases, in our racialized communities.
Well, thank you. I don't want to monopolize the time, but I have to go. And Digisola, thanks for hosting this. And the Chief, I know that we've had a long history, and not only with you, but with the Halton Regional Police Service. For me personally, it goes back about 23 years when I met an incoming newly promoted sergeant by the name of Nishan Duriapa to head up the one-person community mobilization bureau that is now, I think, 42 people. But thank you for your leadership, and continue to work with you closely.
Thank you, and thanks for those questions, Andrew.
All right. Good night, everybody.
I think you might be muted.
Christine, are you speaking? Okay.
Yes, I was. Thank you for that. And I said goodbye to Andrew, and unfortunately he didn't hear me. I'd like to move on and maybe invite Councillor Mike Cluett, Mayor Rob Burton, or Andrew Esmize, if you'd like to speak to any of the topics today,
Okay.
or
Should I go,
introduce yourself. Do you
should
want
I
to
go
go
ahead?
Sure.
Good evening, everyone. Thank you so much, Chief. I wanted to provide feedback to you about it. I haven't had too much encounters or meetings with your team, police officers, but the few times I've met with them, I see them as very professional. That's my own personal view. Some people may disagree with me. However, I just thought to touch on this issue of trust. We're dealing with two levels of trust here. The first level is policing. Police. Even I'm originally from Nigeria. We don't trust police. People, the community don't trust police, and we're talking about Black police and Black citizens. So, and it's pretty much the same in most parts of the world. I don't know where people will trust. So there's that unconscious bias towards the police. So then you now bring in the issue of race. So that's why I talk about two levels of distrust. So, and I don't envy policemen as well, because they're dealing with the community who don't, generally they're not trusted as policemen or police people. Then they're dealing with Blacks because of those the unconscious biases. For the Black person, he feels that he's discriminated against. Not just necessarily from the police. I mean, the police, in my opinion, is just a microcosm of the society. I mean, we get discriminated against in different places, the airport, anywhere, different places. So that's basically what we're faced with. So I empathize with the police, and I also empathize with our people. So my question will be, what are you doing besides or deliberately to deal with indoctrinating or reorienting the police? Because remember, the police are people, are part of our community. If I'm a guy who have my own unconscious bias towards Black people, I'm in the police force, in the police, I have a gun, I see Black people as generally people who commit crimes, unless there's that reorientation. So what I'd like to hear from you is there any particular retraining or reorientation for the existing over 700 police people and the academy for new recruits? So do you have those things in place right now? So that's what I'd like to hear from you. Thank you.
Yeah, and I think there's a lot of different levels to the issue, as you said, rightfully so, and a lot of different factors in working towards a solution. I know one of the things that we screen for when we're looking at hiring officers is that whole idea of systemic discrimination and biases, and we try to screen for, if not educated awareness of diversity, equity, and inclusion, an understanding of it, and an understanding of human rights, and that's certainly a part of training. One of the issues we have when our recruits get to the Ontario Police College is it is so full right now, and it's a 12-week program when they're at the police college physically, learning criminal law and highway traffic law and use of force and firearms and practical exercises, that some of the very important things, and it includes diversity, equity, and inclusion, and racial biases and systemic discrimination and mental health issues and drug and alcohol addiction, probably are not very much of the curriculum there. So the question is, if it can't, I think that program should move from 12 weeks to about 14 weeks, and a lot of those things should be included there. We do include that training here. The other thing we do here, which is unique, is when our Most police services, when the new officers come back, they go into another 2 or 3 or 4 week program with their police service. Here we do another 2 weeks in our training unit before they go out with what's called a coach officer. Those coach officers receive additional training. So that should be another point of contact and a positive, formative relationship with that police recruit. I would hope to hell that we never have a coach officer who is not sensitive to racial biases and discrimination and racism. That's all part of what they are as coach officers. And I don't know, Ryan, if you ever were a coach officer, but that's certainly something that some of our officers train many people. We also bring our new police officers back every year as a group of, once we get through COVID, of about 30 to 40 people, and put them through more advanced trainings as a group, which is more fitting with their degree of experience. So that's something that I don't believe is done in any other police service. But we also do annual, we call it block training, because normally all of our frontline officers come in for a block of 4 days and do classroom training and firearms and use of force training. And there, all of these, biases and training on racial biases and de-escalation are re-emphasized. And I think, apart from the fact that Halton is a very unique community in many different ways, we're very fortunate comparatively with some other jurisdictions in general here in Halton. And we have some resources that other police services may not have, and we invest in training in some ways that other services may not have. And we do some unique things. I was going to say, not specifically, but there was a horrific police shooting in Toronto several years ago, Sammy Yatim on the subway. That should never have happened. Since that happened, our training bureau here, it was a couple of years ago now, we were still in the old headquarters building. Ryan would have gone through the training, I believe. We brought a town of Oakville donated a bus to us so we could train de-escalation of a mentally ill individual on a bus and videotape it and provide feedback to the officers. Because if the first time you've ever dealt with somebody on a bus or a streetcar is the real situation, and that situation should never have happened no matter what, but why not train for those things? So that's the sort of partnerships we can reach out to our municipalities and have a bus given to us for 4 or 5 months and train specifically on de-escalation. But I think, we all of our police officers need to get comfortable with all people from all different diverse backgrounds. But I was thinking today, and I want to say this in relation to this question, and that is, we have a lot of issues going on in the GTA right now with guns and gangs. A lot of our street gangs in Toronto happen to be Black street gangs. That does not mean that every Black youth in Toronto is a member of a street gang. And we have a very, very low percentage of police officers who come into conflict for one reason or another with racially diverse citizens. And that does not mean that all police officers are members of that group. And it's probably something like 99% in both of those cases, where let's say 99%, probably more, 99% of Black people in Ontario have never been involved in a crime, never will be, never want to be. And 99% of our police officers are acting professionally, de-escalating, arresting people without incident. But everyone's focusing on the 1%. So I think we need to do a better job through communications with each other of making that point. More of our police officers are like Ryan Smith. I hope that's a good example to this group. But more people are outgoing and engaged and deal professionally with all of our citizens, regardless of their background. just as all of those citizens, by and large, are lawful, abiding citizens, and we need each other. So I think that's where we need to go. You may be muted there. Sorry. Thank you.
Oh, thank you, Chief. I was just saying thank you. I mean, my last point will be, even as a parent, I'm struggling to deal with a younger generation. In the past, my dad could never have seen me wear dreadlocks, you know. But I have a 15-year-old who is a good kid, you know. But wearing a dreadlock, it's a way of life. It's for him, it's fashionable. So I don't have to be in denial that I have to really catch up with the times and say, look, and bring myself to speed to say, you know what, I have to modernize. So we just have to also modernize. So I'm glad to hear things like that. We perhaps by infusing ourselves with younger recruits, diverse recruits, will definitely help this narrative. Yes,
absolutely.
Yep.
Thank you.
You're welcome. Thank you.
Great. Thank you, Andrew, and thank you, Chief. I'd like to now call on Mayor Burton. Mayor Burton, just wondering if you could give us maybe 3 to 5 minutes and give us your input on the discussion today.
I want to, it's hard to talk because I hear myself coming back at the same time.
I'll mute myself.
Well, give me a second. I don't know how to do this. Does that? No, it doesn't help me either. I'll just try to ignore myself. I'm actually listening to myself, half a second delayed in my, I'll just take it off. Too soon old, too late wise. I want to thank everybody for coming. I want to thank you for organizing. I really appreciate this. You know, every time I work with the chief, I am gratified to see the depth of his experience and his incredible ability at communication. And I am reassured that once again, as I have been often, that I made the right decision to steal him from Kingston and bring him here to be our police chief. And you know, it's wonderful to hear his commitment to our principles of community engagement and fairness for all. I want to take I don't want to become famous for talking too much, so I'm going to close with this one little point. 13 years ago, in Halton, we at the Halton Regional Council, we created the Halton Equity and Diversity Roundtable. And one of its jobs is to be a clearinghouse for all of the groups that are concerned with equity and diversity and inclusion. And it's my hope that we'll all link up there so that we can work together and help each other make our community stronger. I guess the one bonus point, the board, I speak for the board as their chair. I think I've been chair for about 10 years now, and that's an elected position every January. So any year, I could lose the support of the board and never be chair again. But so far, I've been lucky in that way. And the board has been consistent as long as I've been on it in driving the service toward greater representation of our community in the faces that you see in the uniforms. And that includes increasing women in the police service. And so there's many different biases that have had to be overcome over the years to get to that, to the place where we are and to continue going. And the easiest one to imagine is, if you think back, I'm sure you can remember a time when everybody thought, oh, women can't be police officers. How could they handle it, right? I mean, surely you've all seen that or heard that said. And when I moved to Halton 26 years ago, there was an incident on my street when I had barely unpacked, where two teenagers were trying to break into a home in the middle of the night. And one of them was the boy from next door, the other side of me. And this is down the street, 3 houses. And the two of them had picked up a gigantic cement planter that, they couldn't handle, neither one of them could handle it themselves, but together they were trying to use it as a battering ram to go through the front door of this house. And the owner was away on vacation, but his son was house sitting, right? And as it happened, he was going upstairs when he heard the commotion out front. And these kids, they smash the outside glass door and they're getting ready to heave it again. He throws open the door and he instantly takes in what's going on. And he was a guard as a position. He's a front line player, a really big man on the Hamilton Ticats football team. And there's a thing called a clothesline tackle where you put up both your arms. It's illegal in football. And he clothesline tackled the two boys and drove them into the grass. And his wife, who was also there, called the police and said, "You've got to come quick. Two boys are trying to break into the house, and my husband has apprehended them." And the night desk said, "Well, it's a busy night. We'll be there as soon as we can, but it sounds like it's under control. Just keep him and we'll get there." And she goes, "You don't understand. If you don't get here right away, he'll kill him." And two squad cars showed up almost immediately, each one driven by a police woman. And they took charge of these kids, no problem at all. So that's my first introduction to the Halton Police Service. And I thought, oh, well, they figured it out here, at least for women. And you've already heard the story of Nishan Duryappa and how, he's just a boy in high school who gets turned on to a career in the police and goes pretty far. I don't envy him the troubles he has inherited and the problems he has to fix there. But I do know from working with him and promoting him to deputy that he is the person who can handle it. And I'm incredibly proud of him. So thank you very much for this. I have to say, if you want to understand me and the board, you only have to read the 9 principles of the Peel Principles of Community Policing, which the chief already mentioned. And if anybody wants a copy, I give them away to anybody who will look at them, because they work not just for policing, but for being a citizen and for being a mayor. So I look forward to working with you. I hope we'll all meet at the Halton Equity and Diversity Roundtable.
Thank you. Excellent. Thank you, Mayor Burton. Thank you very much for that. I'll now turn to, can you hear me okay? I'll turn to Councillor Mike Cluett. Just wanted to see if you wanted to chime in, add any additional thoughts.
There we go.
There you go.
All right. Sorry for the view there. Hold on. Let's see if I can. How can I get this turned around? There we go. Sorry, I'm doing double duty here. We're collecting some lights to light up Allendale Seniors Home this next weekend, coming up for Christmas to give them. So there's a whole bunch of Christmas stuff, and so we're collecting all the lights here. So sorry, but I have been listening throughout the presentation, and Mayor Burton really outlined it really well about how proud we are at Halton Region and the 4 municipalities of having such great leadership at the Halton Police. And throughout the years, I've been in Milton now since 2003, and it's just it's an incredible police service that we have, and they're being always open and always listening. So to have your police chief here on this, and there was another webinar earlier on today about crime racism and hate crimes, that he was there as well, making a presentation along with Ryan Finn. So your police service is listening to the community, and we want to make sure that we continue to listen to it as elected officials, as police, and as community members. So it's communication is always a two-way street, and we definitely need to hear from you in the community, as well as you hearing from us. It's going to be a constant conversation, and we're going to keep working at it, and we're going to keep doing our best. I always use the coin the phrase to make this more of a complete community for everybody. So again, thanks for having this session tonight. Thank you for hosting and for getting us involved. Thank you, Chief. Thank you, everybody, for the great conversation and the great dialogue here tonight. And I'm looking forward to the next one, because I know there will be another one.
Absolutely, there will be. Thank you very much, Councillor. All right, I'd like to open it up to any other questions on the calls. Any callers want to, if you have any questions, you can unmute yourselves. And also I'd like to invite Officer Ryan Smith as well. I was saving you for the best, but the best for last, but please do speak.
No, I don't know.
We want to hear from you.
No, you know what, I think, I echo what the chief says in terms of our commitment to working with, the diverse community in Halton. And really, my philosophy as we approach some of this work and that we're looking to do is that, it's a time now where we kind of take a step back and listen, more than we ever have, and really get an understanding of what the community needs are and what we as a police service can do to meet those needs. And that's something, since I came into this role, that has been a heavy focus of mine. So, one, I really appreciate the opportunity from the ACCH to come in here today and listen and hear what some of the concerns are. And then, that drives the change that we're all looking to see. So Adegisola and I have had conversations even outside this town hall about some of the challenges within the policing community and how we can better support, those diverse individuals that we deal with on a daily basis. But, know that within my role, I'm committed to making the change that everybody wants to see. And, I appreciate, again, the opportunity to come on and just listen, because like I said, I think that's where we need to be as a police service and get a good understanding of what the needs of everybody are. So at any time, anybody here can get my information from Adegisola and connect with me offline. I think this conversation will continue beyond tonight with the ACCH. There's no question. I'd love to get some, extended feedback on some of the things we can do. I know the chief touched on some of the training for our officers, and that's a heavy focus for me, is revamping that training curriculum for all our officers. From the moment you walk in the door, prior to even going to the Ontario Police College. And then when you come back and beyond, when you become a coach officer, when you become a supervisor, as you move lateral transfers or promotions, it's important that, it's embedded in everything we do. So thank you very much for having us. And I look forward to working with everybody in the future. So.
Great, excellent, and we appreciate the fact that we have officers such as yourself driving the charge. And one of the things actually I just wanted to ask about is, especially in regards to the programs and the initiatives that that you are working on and involved in, is community involvement programs. So I know we heard earlier about the YIPI and the PEACE, so the Police, Ethnic and Cultural Education Youth Leadership Programs, as well as Youth and Policing Initiatives. There's also TRACK and a few other great programs that the police force is running. For those within the community that might not otherwise be great resources that are normally enjoyed by other members of society, such as social media, Twitter, TikTok, you name it. How is the police force promoting these programs within the community?
Yeah, so you have a bunch of programs that we've recognized. Can you hear me? I keep getting some feedback. I'm not sure.
It might be me.
I think that's better. Yeah. So we We have a bunch of youth programs that we run, recognizing that youth are the future, and it's important that their voices are heard. And I think the chief alluded to it previously that, we had, a lot of peaceful marches that took place across our region as a result of some of the challenges with law enforcement across North America. Those were heavily youth driven from an organization standpoint and from those that attended. So what that showed me is that now more than ever, youth want their voices heard and they want to be part of that change. I can say for myself, when I was younger and in high school, I'm not that old, but when I was younger and when I was in high school, that wouldn't be something that I would have been comfortable doing. And that's kind of a sign of the change of times, where now more than ever, we need to invest in our youth and we need to give them a voice. So like you said, those peace track youth and policing programs, we've just launched, we will be launching at the beginning of the new year, our first ever youth advisory council, which is similar to our diversity engagement table. And that will be made up of youth, representative of the community we serve, that will come in and advise us as a police service of how, we can do better in terms of engaging with youth, letting them have their voices heard, having them help develop new youth programs and initiatives where it's truly youth driven, recognizing again that, it's time now to hear their voices and they're very much in tune with the social issues that are happening. So, we promote all those events, obviously through, our social media platforms and online, but what we also do is we disseminate that information to our community partners so that we can reach those individuals through those types of communication channels that may not be available through social media and other online platforms. And again, obviously, if there's an opportunity for us to connect in any other way, we're open to explore that. Absolutely. So, yeah.
Great, excellent. Thank you so much for that, Sergeant Smith. Pavan, I see that you have your hand up. You definitely want to unmute yourself and let's hear from you.
Hi, everyone. Good evening. I see a few familiar faces on the screen. And for those of you who I haven't met, I'm Pavan Parmar. I'm the Town and Regional Councillor for Ward 7. And I just wanted to thank CCH for putting this on tonight and for the Chief for his presentation and remarks. It's certainly always great to hear from you on the things that HRPS is doing to work forward. A couple of things that I wanted to touch on. Well, first of all, diversity is just such a huge piece in our community, and we are growing every day. I've lived and grown up here in Oakville my whole life, and I can tell you that things have tremendously changed for me from when I was a little girl in school to what I see in our diverse community now. So it's a really important conversation to have, but more so on the youth piece as well. And the Chief and Officer Smith also talked about programs and initiatives, but something that the Chief touched on was, that feedback and that support from the community and getting youth involved, and also considering policing as a career. And something I just wanted to put out to CCAH is I know that the fire service has done a couple of these initiatives where they actually have a conversation like this with youth. We have a lot of great officers that would come out and speak to a career in policing and, talk about all the different types of opportunities, because there are certainly a lot of different opportunities with the Halton Regional Police. And I think, having those conversations can really play a part in erasing some biases that youth might have to getting into that field. And just something to leave you with, something to consider to do in the future. I know that I would happily participate in something like that, helping to organize that. And thank you again for organizing. It was truly great to join this conversation this evening.
Great, thank you very much. And just want to say it's ACCH. I don't know if you, so I think Andrew had left, but we're ACCH, but nonetheless, I appreciate Thank you very much.
Thank you.
No, that's okay. Thank you. And that's such great points. And I think, I've never been more proud of the youth, of our youth, as I have been in the last, I'm going to say 12 months. I'm not saying I wasn't proud of them in the past, but I think, the way that they're stepping up and getting involved and speaking up and, being involved in racial injustices, environment, all of that kind of stuff, I feel that we're headed in the right direction. So I think now more than ever is when they definitely need their voice heard. So thank you to that. All right. Any other questions from the panel or any other questions from the audience? Okay. Quiet crowd. I'll just scan through and make sure that there's no questions in the chat. Okay. All right, at this time, Mr. Abbey, Mr. Salami, I think I'll turn to you for a vote of thanks, unless Lady Adishsola, if you wanted to add anything before closing. Am I frozen?
No, you're not.
No.
You see Andrew raising his hand. Andrew is maybe raised his hand again.
Yes,
Okay.
I apologize. I don't mean to take time. Quick question.
No,
I just
no, please ask your
now that
questions.
we're talking about infusing, um, uh, creating people like Chief Nish, how do we start hiring young people when we only have 14 vacancies in the Halton Police Service for next year? How are we going to do that? It'd be nice to know.
Yeah, and then we probably hire close to 50 every year. The 14 will be additional officers, which are built into next year's budget, because we have to grow a little bit to keep up with the growth of our population and different workload issues that we have. But in addition to those 14 or 15, we'll probably have 30 or 35 police officers retire during the year too. So in total, we probably hire about 50 per year. Now over 10 years, that gives us 500 opportunities to hire if we project out that way. That would be 2/3 of the officers that work here. So the numbers really add up quickly. It's just incremental. I think the other part that's equally important is what people have talked to tonight, and that's the outreach to the youth. Because Nish didn't start off as a chief or as a constable.
Yes.
He started off as a student member of the peace program. So to get people involved and engaged and enlightened and excited about what this career could be and the positive difference they could make. That's why those outreach programs. And I think the Youth Advisory Council is going to be very important that way too. I think we're going to come to know some youth, and they're going to come to know us through that process. And that too may lead to some candidates. And I think Mayor Burton had his hand up.
Yeah, I think I'm being heard. Andrew, it's a great question because it gives me an opportunity to tell you that every year we hire new niches. And I see them every year at the intake ceremonies. And not only new niches, but new police women and new officers from all the colors of the rainbow. And we have future niches in the
pipeline.
We have future niches in senior roles ready to advance to the highest role. Or as I like to say, when we hired the last, when we promoted the last deputy chief, we were having a ceremony to, present him to the world, hundreds of people there. He gave a lovely speech about how much it meant to him to reach this life's goal. And my job is usually to speak last. And when you're the last speaker, you better be funny or you're in big trouble. and you got to be short. So I just looked at him and I said, I'm glad you're thrilled with the job, and I hope you do really well. And if you don't, I want you to remember, I've got backups. But I'm saying here tonight, we have backups for Nish, and they're on their way. So rest easy about that.
No, thank you, Mayor. Yeah, the only point I just want to add on this top issue, Chief, it will be great if you can. I don't know if you have a mentoring program. People like Nish or some other successful police officers people who have who've been successful who's had successful career. It'd be nice to involve them and see if you can help bring them into mentoring programs, you know, with young people as well. It probably does help. Thank you.
Great. Thank you, Andrew. Thank you, Mayor. There's one other question that came in, and it's regarding mental health. So Chief Tanner, can you tell us what % of the Halton police budget is allocated to mental health? And if there's anything that COVID has taught us, it's the extreme need to set up different services, across Canada at the federal level, provincial level, and city level that can address these types of scenarios more effectively. So we do know of great programs like COAST and the Mobile Crisis Rapid Response Team, but how much of the police budget is actually allocated to mental health programs?
Yeah, I would have to do some work and come up with a dollar range, but we're heavily invested in mental health. It's not just the Mobile Crisis Rapid Response Teams. They used to be able to, there's 4 teams, and there's 4 highly trained psychiatric nurses that work side by side in frontline police cars with our officers. That's not enough to cover 24 hours a day, and that is not enough to respond to the 3,800 persons in crisis calls or suicide or attempt suicide calls, which is about 760, I believe, in 2019. So they cannot possibly respond to even all of those. They used to go to about 38%. They now go to around 26 or 27% of our persons in crisis. So we have, when you mentioned other levels of government, we have continued to lobby the provincial government for additional funding to increase our crisis response teams. And we believe that they will be increased, if not doubled, over the next year. But hopefully that will add another 2 teams in the very near future. And that will help to further cover that area. We're also, it can't just be crisis response teams, because we could never have enough of them to guarantee that they will get to every mental health call or person in crisis or distress. So we believe we will be the first police service, once we complete putting all of our frontline police officers through a 5-day, very intensive course on crisis intervention training. It's also called the CIT training course. I think we'll be the first police service that has put all frontline officers through that, because any one of the many frontline men and women were out there working in our community might be the first person on scene. And we're doing that, but we're also investing in technology when it comes to training. And perhaps at some point, and probably post-COVID, we could have some of you down here to our headquarters and allow you to experience what we've invested with Axon technology in surround 3D virtual training. So we can immerse our officers. One of the scenarios is dealing with a schizophrenic person in crisis. But the beginning of that training scenario, once you put the goggles on and you are completely in that scenario, the first part of that scenario is you are the person in crisis. You are the person experiencing a schizophrenic episode who is observing police officers walking towards you and hearing different things and interpreting things in different ways. And then the officers are switched out and put in the response mode so that they interact and have to de-escalate and do all the other things. So there are a lot of ways that we need to invest in that sort of training. You mentioned we have COAST, and certainly we work very closely as well with CMHA and other organizations on mental health and drug and alcohol addiction. But those are some of the examples. As I said, we responded to 3,800 persons in crisis last year. They would have taken an hour to 2 hours each, and a couple of officers. Very quickly, it's hundreds and hundreds of thousands of dollars that are invested within our budget. But I know Mayor Burton had something to say there.
Well, you said an acronym, CMHA. and they may not know what that is. And that's the opening that I was looking for, to say, we need to understand that the police are not by any means the only resource that society has had for a long time now to deal with mental health. We at the police are a very small part of it. There's the Canadian Mental Health Association and other organizations as well that provide mental health care and services to people. Our hospitals also have extensive mental health resources devoted to the community, and public health does as well. So there's echelons or layers of mental health care in our society. So, you know, to give you some context, Chief, don't we answer 157,000 calls for service a year or something like that?
Yes, that's right.
And so, you know, he just told you there's 3,800 mental health calls. We've got, I think, 3,600 calls a year besides those, where I'm trying to learn new terminology. Intimate partner violence, domestic violence. It used to be called domestic violence, but anyway, you know, we got 3,600 calls where the violence between spouses or people who live together gets so bad that a relative or a neighbor phones us and asks us to come. But you know, and both of those are concerning, and they're too many. But remember, those are just two amounts like this out of 157,000 calls for service. So I mean, we get, that's like more, but that's somewhere around 450 calls a day on average. Mm-hmm. And all 700 officers can't be on duty at the same time, right? They're on shifts. So you start to do the math. I have a chart. I can share this, I think. Let me see if this will work. I've never used this thing, this program, but can you, is that showing for you?
Yes.
It's coming up, yeah, it's there now.
All right, that is the annual increase for the police budget. And can you see where it started to go down around 2006? In 2006, Chair Gary Carr and I got elected, and we thought things were a little crazy in the police budget increase department, because that's way over inflation. That's really excessive. And Chair Carr was on the police board for that first down ramp. And then he asked me to take over. It's sort of like, now I've shown you how to do it, you keep it going. And you can see what I've done through my leadership since then. So what happened with the money that didn't go there anymore is we diverted that at the Halton region into the Halton Community Investment Fund, and that invests further into the helping agencies, the non-governmental helping agencies in our community that help people, including mental health, but not just mental health, help people who are at risk. And in the budget meeting yesterday at the Regional Council, we didn't vote on the budget, but we studied the budget together as council. And next Wednesday is the council meeting where the budget will be, I hope, approved. We are, I think, about to add $500,000 to the Halton Community Investment Fund. When I started the Halton Community Investment Fund with $800,000 14 years ago. And with this, we'll be close to 4 million. So that's you know, back during the defund police thing in the spring, I tried to explain to the kids, we already did that. So anyway, I hope that helps you understand.
No, it does. And in fairness to the question raised, I think it was just more based on, you know, with the perception, like you know, Chief had mentioned earlier in the call, is media. And so often, unfortunately, when we see that there's exasperated issues with either developmental people or mental health conditions, the media sometimes will portray this image. And so I think the perception is that, well, if 911 is the first caller, then can we put more of the budget into mental health? But
Yeah.
that's definitely, yeah, you definitely answered the question.
Yeah,
Thank
so
you.
I'm grateful for the question because it gave me a chance to say, oh yes, and did we ever? and we've already done it, is what I was trying to say. You know, the media, I've been around a long time, and you will, if you have an ironic sense of humor like I do, you may find this funny in an ironic way. I worked in the media. I made my fortune in the media. I was a reporter, and then I started a television network. So it's probably startling if I say to you, the best way to look at the media is to regard any report in the media as an indicator that something may have happened, but not quite as they describe. You always need to wait for the next day's version. That's anyway, thank you.
Mm-hmm. Thank you. All right, Mr. Salami, please unmute yourself and.
Yeah, thank you. Thank you everybody for participating tonight. I have a question, and it's more or less like a suggestion as well. Where I come from, we usually say that police is your friend. And all over the world, I know police are there to broker peace and to make orderly society. Chief, how can we transit from being so unfriendly with the police and become friends with police? Because like in this society where we are now, there are a lot of biases. We know that when Black people see the police, first thing is like, oh, am I a target? Or the biased mind is there. So suggestion that I'm bringing in now, like you've mentioned so many organizations and so many things that the police are doing, but it's sometimes for our community, we do not see that because the participation is not there like that. And I heard when you mentioned that when you're gonna recruit people to the police force, like for next year it's gonna be like 14. Some people will retire, and some, like what is the inclusion rate? How do we like invite and be friend with the people of my community, with people of color, and let them participate fully so that we can coexist and live happily in our society. This is especially in Halton region. I've never recorded any my experience, any police brutality or things like that. But at least, unless we want to lie to ourselves, racial injustice is not a myth in our environment. We all know that. So how can we turn around from being unfriendly to be police friend? How can all of us, we have to work together? I do understand that. So, but what can we do to make it happen?
I think the first thing we have to do, I recommend strongly, is it's my motto. I offer it to you free with no charge. Engage and expand. Say hello. Start a conversation. Don't wait. Lean in. Reveal that you're a friendly person, that you want to be friends. Make the connection. This community, I've lived in this community 26 years, and we've had, for longer than that, for many years, we've had diversity in our community, working together and living together. The CCAH, which isn't this group, but it's a 50-year-old group, they've been very active and proactive throughout this time. They know our history. I should tell you the founding history of the town of Oakville, and to a degree it's true of Halton as well. But 3 races were the pioneers who settled Oakville. There were indigenous residents, there were white residents, and there were Black residents. The Black residents were fleeing slavery in the United States. And, you know, it's historically established that most of the slaves in the United States came from Nigeria, or the area that is now Nigeria. And so there's a, you know, the group that we have here that's a direct descendant of those pioneers, you know, in a way, they're Nigerian once removed, if you will. I'm trying to get you guys to be more comfortable with each other. But they were united in a goal of creating a community of harmony and prosperity. And that has been true ever since. I mean, we're almost 200 years old. This period of settlement was from about 1827 and for 30 years until 1857, when the legislature recognized Oakville as a viable community and said you can call yourself a town. But there were hundreds of people here before that day, and they were indigenous, white, and black, working together to create a community of harmony and prosperity. And by and large, that is what has happened here in Oakville throughout our history. And people come here because they know that this is a great place to live. And the reason it's a great place to live is because we all accept each other. I tell newcomers of any color, because, you know, white newcomers also have a newcomer problem of how do I fit in? And I tell everybody, there's always work to be done in our community, because all of our community groups are volunteer groups run by moms and dads, chiefly to provide safe activities for their kids. And if you have a willing pair of hands when there's community work to be done, you will be welcomed immediately. That's the kind of place this is. And together we've created a wonderful community, and we will keep doing that.
And I think to get back, the other part of your question is, it comes down to communication. And the deputies and I have been speaking in the last few months about what's important in policing, and it's relationships and understanding, transparency and honesty and authenticity in what you want as an organization or as a police service or as a society. And so that is where, Abby, we need to talk, and we need to expose the realities of the Halton Regional Police Service to a larger number of people, whether it's the Black community in an event such as tonight, or for someone like Andrew to take part in tonight and go back and speak with his 15-year-old son about some of the other realities of policing and about our relationships in Halton and what we want to do, as opposed to what the bigger media might portray sometimes. We're all heavily impacted by the horrific George Floyd situation. There's no doubt about it. It did not happen in Halton, and it impacted on all of us. Our police officers, all of you as members of the Black community, your children, watching that horrific situation. But sometimes in our discussions, and particularly with our youth, if once we build the relationships and the legitimate relationships that we're dealing with and talking about tonight, and people can go back to their children and say, but here's the other part of the story. The police service actually wants you to consider becoming a member of the service. We always want you to be good citizens and law-abiding citizens, and some people are going to make mistakes, and the police have to de-escalate. The reality is, though, we have not had, other than that video, which we talked about earlier with the pushing situation with a young person, we have not had the abuse of power, the abuse of use of force, the types of high-profile situations here in Halton. But yet, it has impacted the relationship between the police in general and society in general, the media, and the Black community specifically, even if it didn't happen here. It can happen here just like anywhere else, because there's systemic discrimination and there is racism, and there are incidents that happen in the region of Halton, and some that we investigate, such as our hate crime in Burlington. But I think, Abby, as we work more together and we have increased numbers who take the time to understand each other, and that goes for all the folks on this call tonight, or CCAH or other groups, and our diversity forum, and our peace students and our Yippee students and our youth diversity forum that we'll have. All those people are going to learn more about the police service. We also run another program for adults, and it's a 12-week program where they're immersed in learning a great deal about the police service. It's just we haven't been able to do that during COVID either, but there are lots of ways that we can get the message out. Social media is one of them, but not everyone's on Twitter. And so I think working together, it's understanding, it's relationships, but it's got to be authenticity, and it's got to be realistic in that 99% of the world is good, if I can use that number. 99% of police officers are good. The 1%, or the 1 in 1,000 that shame us all and give us a bad name, it's horrific. But there is the other 99. So I think we have to understand each other more, and we have to certainly understand all of our backgrounds. But this is a country that's built on all of us coming together, and it's built on equal rights. So thank our kids and your kids for asking for those equal rights, and let's all work towards that. And I think we can do it.
Excellent. Thank you very much. All right, so we're nearing 10 past the hour. I know we were supposed to go till 8, but this has obviously been really good, fruitful, open dialogue, great conversation. So Chief Tanner and Mayor Rob Burton, we appreciate yourselves joining, as well as the elected officials and other law enforcement, Sergeant Ryan Smith. Mr. Abbey, I'll turn to you for a vote of thanks.
Yeah, thank you. Thank you so much. Once again, my name is Abi Salami, and I'm one of the board members of ACCH, and at the same time, the finance lead for our great association. I hope everyone enjoyed the informative session tonight, especially presence of the police chief. I would like to thank the chief, Mayor Burton, the Regional Councillor Mike Cloet, Regional Councillor Pavan Palmer, Mr. Andrew Terrell of CCAH, Mr. Andrew Ezemise of Nigerian in Milton, and host of others. Thank you so much. It is my honor and privilege now to give a vote of thanks to all who helped make this event tonight possible. We will not be enlightened about security, protection, and way forward in our society without great appearance of our police chief, and all other government officials. Thank you so much. We really, really appreciate your effort. So first and foremost, I'd like to thank ACCH for giving this opportunity to gather together. Even this period of COVID, we still made it possible to bring all the good heads together. Thank you so much. Especially our Chief Tanner, we thank you for your enormous knowledge of leadership and experiences that you shared with us tonight. Thank you so much. All the information about various groups and other events that you're putting together, thank you so much. We will utilize that and make sure that we all coexist in a harmonious way. I would like to thank everyone for participating in this series tonight. I am so grateful for this opportunity. This is one of our aims and objectives at ACCH, basically to bridge the gap and coexist peacefully and make our community better. So this junction, I will say big thank you to everybody. Thank you very much. And we hope that soon we will see you again and we will see progress in our community. Thank you so much. Have a good night.
Thank you. Thank you very much, everyone.
Thank you very much.
Thank you. Good night.
Thank you.
Keep well, stay safe, and let me know of any chance to help.
Thank you.
Thank you, everyone.
Okay,
Thank you, Chief.
Have a good
Thank you,
night.
Mayor. Thank
Have a
you.
good night. Thank you.
Bye.
Have a good night.
Bye.
Thanks, Ryan. Take care, everyone.
Thank
Take care.